Hey folks, Cryo here. You already know what time it is. We're back with another installment of our Mythic Plus pull-by-pull dungeon guide aimed at helping you guys time your weekly 15 and under keys, even if your group may involve some pugs. Today we're going to be taking a look at Operation Mechagon Junkyard. That's the outside portion of the mega dungeon that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Now, full disclosure, this dungeon has a plethora of routes that can be used. And it's not just because the hard mode boss flying overhead changes up your route from time to time, but also the pylons can be used 1,000 different ways. The pathing I chose to show you today is certainly unorthodox. It's not very fluid, it can be kind of clunky, and there's a fair amount of backtracking, but I feel it cuts down a significant amount of oops moments. Now, what I mean by oops moment is this dungeon kind of revolves around the usage of 3 buff bots. Now, the buffs they provide you, while they help you tremendously, they do not persist through death. So every time you have a party member die, you have to take time out of your run to go get them more bots, thus limiting the amount of time you have to time the rest of your key. That being said, this run is slowish and should not be used if you're trying to 3 or 2 chest your run. But again, this video and this series is made for the average Joe who's just trying to time their weekly key. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right. Plus 14 Mechagon Junkyard. I thought it was a 15. I was bamboozled. But we 2-chested it, so I guess that's okay. Now as we begin, no matter what week it is, what the affixes are, or who's in my group, I always start this way. It guarantees me right off the bat a welding bot, which reduces damage taken and increases healing received. And I also grab a shock bot, which grants me a chance to proc a decent amount of nature damage. Now this first pack here, you want to be wary of the Scrap Hounds. They're the ones that cast Bork, which is a frontal attack that can be dodged. Simply sidestep away and you'll be fine. The blasters do jump away and may cause you to pull unwanted adds. Try to keep them at bay with stuns and grips. Here we have a patrolling weaponized crawler, dodge scrap cannon, it's a frontal blast, and shock coil. This is unavoidable AoE damage that everyone in your party takes, so healers beware and make sure you're ready. Now once the spider's dead, head across the robe and grab your grease bot. This bot grants you haste and movement speed, and by this point, your tank should have all 3 of the buffs, thus can solely focus on managing mobs while the rest of your group gathers their own bots. As we move up the hill and to our left, you will find your party's second shock bot. Someone should definitely grab this while the rest of you deal with the malfunctioning scrap bot. This is a fairly simple mob. Do not stand in his spinning blades of death. And if you're the tank, be sure to watch out for his exhaust cloud. Once he casts this, smoke will appear, and the mob will be untargetable. Simply drag the scrap bot out of the cloud and DPS him down. When it reaches low health, it will cast self-destruct. Do not stand in the blast, or just kill him. Another weaponized crawler, same mechanics. Now we're ready to activate our first awakened pylon and do our first skip. Now I use this skip 98% of the time to reach the tucked away pylon near the last boss, as it can be a pain to get to and cause unnecessary wipes or oops moments. Now while we're kiting this, I want to bring up the route in its design. Although it may look convoluted and messy, it's really quite simple. So this middle part is what we're going to be doing first by dragging the far right pylon to the far left pylon. As long as the hard mode boss is not flying over Trixie's room, the far left pylon will be dropped there. If the hard mode boss is there, I would take the second pylon, the far left one, all the way to the top north pylon. You'll see later on in the video, it'll make much more sense, I promise. The reason I do this is after you kill the second boss, whichever one it may be, the hard mode boss may be flying overhead this far left pylon, and you'll get walkie-talkies to spawn, thus preventing you from easily entering the Shadow Realm and activating the Lieutenant. By tackling this early on, it's never an issue. Now as soon as everyone gets out, go ahead and pull these troopers. They are only casting Nano Slicer, which is a bleed dot left on the tank. As long as they have aggro, no one else should be taking too much damage. For this run, we definitely should have pulled the patrolling coil bearer, but we did not. And he got our healer and 2 DPS in combat before they were able to activate the pylon. Fortunately, they were able to kill it while the warrior and I handled the lieutenant, and once they poured it in, we all ran down to Trixie's room for our second skip. As soon as you exit, you will be in combat with your third crawler, so make sure the tank exits first. There's also a grease bot and a welding bot on this platform for 2 more players. Again, that scrap cannon is cast on a player, so do not move or you will hit somebody else. Now this next pull is a doozy, and it's definitely the hardest pull you'll have to face because the patrolling mobs are a pain to gather up. The main thing you want to watch out for is overclock. This will buff all of the enemies around, causing them to hit harder and faster. Interrupt ASAP. Also avoid the grenades, or orange swirlies you see on the ground. Utilize your stuns and grips if you have any to keep the blasters from going too far. Again, we have more blasters and scrappers. Do your best to keep them grouped up. The reason you pull these next 3 is to get your group's 3rd shock bot. Kinda hard to see as it's tucked behind my party frames, but it's there, I promise. Once the group is dead, go ahead and pull the mechanic and your last crawler. You can CC the mechanic if you want to fight them separately. However, if you do fight them together, just be sure to interrupt repair, as it will heal their target to full. Be mindful of more overclocks, but with just 1, it's not too terrible, as the spell can be purged or spell stolen. Moving to our next pack, this will free up your group's 4th shock bot. It's tucked away behind the spark coil, and I do believe once our warlock is done chaos bolting his enemies in the face, he will mosey on over and grab it. This pull, again, has a mechanic, so watch out for those overclocks. Behind this pack, you will find another grease bot and a welding bot, for anybody in your party who needs one. These 2 heavy scrap bots can potentially be annoying. They're not too difficult to deal with. I mean, their gyro spin is easily avoidable. However, sometimes they cast exhaust and then immediately repair, and you're unable to interrupt the repair if they're in their exhaust cloud. I found that pre-kiting the mob helped tremendously, and I also believe that if you have a melee enter the exhaust, they still may be able to get their interrupt off, but do not quote me on that. Once the bots are dead, I like to pull just a little bit more while your last member grabs their shock bot. At this point, if you've had 0 deaths, all 5 members should be rocking that shock bot. Fun fact about these little grunters, they do not bolster each other. However, if you kill the malfunctioning scrap bot first, it will bolster the grunters. So either kill all the grunters first, or just deal with the +1 bolster buff. Now that all 5 members have their shockbot buff, we are ready to engage our first boss. This fight is very easy as long as you keep an eye on pedal to the metal. Mega Crash will aim his motorcycle in a straight line and prepare to launch forward. This does a tremendous amount of damage. After, he will cast Burnout and roll around in a circle. This also does damage, but also drops an exhaust cloud that will be used later. Here, you're going to see Trixie cast Mega Tase. This is uninterruptible. However, the targeted player simply needs to run into an exhaust cloud just before the cast finishes, and Trixie will miss her shot. Throughout the fight, you want to kick as many tases as you can, and note that Mega Crash will cleave. Once they're dead, head back towards your third pylon and second boss. Just before you enter, be sure to pull the Scrap Boom Bully and his little minions. Watch out for the Bully Shockwave. It's a sidesteppable frontal, and make sure you're interrupting his enraged ability. Once they're all dead, enter the pylon. This pylon is always the same and will always be dropped in the same location. As soon as you exit, there are going to be mobs again, so make sure your tank is exiting first. You'll engage 3 trash tossers. Once they are dead, you're going to want to pull the malfunctioning scrap bot, and then the patrolling bully. Just before the boss, there's going to be 2 more bullies. The shockwaves often go off in different directions, so be mindful and watch your feet. Make sure you're kicking those enraged as soon as you can. This boss seems like it would be overwhelming, but it really is not that hard. There's a ton of adds, but you shouldn't focus on them. Instead, worry about Charged Smash. This is a cast that's cast on the tank, creates a big blue circle that everyone should stand in. Standing in the smash grants you an electric charge buff that you can be used on 4 coils and a broken robot. Prioritize the robot first, and then I always choose the coil nearest the cave. These coils will insta-kill any small adds while the robot spins around and mops up the rest. Rinse repeat as needed, dodge the rumble rocks, and move on. And once the king is dead, we begin our long backtracking journey to our first pylon. Now once you exit, there are a few mobs I like to pull that free up some extra bots just in case anyone is lacking. Just by pulling 1 gnome-eating slime, a grease bot can be found at the edge of the pond, oil spill, whatever you want to call it. And once the slime is dead, go ahead and pull the 2 coil bearers. This frees up another shock bot and a welding bot. Once they're dead, we'll make our way down to Gunker. Here we have some troopers, the ones that stack Nano Slicer, and 1 new mob, the Renormalizer. This will cast Enlarge, which increases the health and damage of the target by 100%, and they will cast Shrink, which causes the target player to deal 99% less damage and healing, but also run the risk of being stepped on. Toxic Monstrosities only have 2 abilities. They grip you in, and they cast Consume. Run away as soon as you are gripped, and do not stand in Consume. If you're Protection Warrior, you can spell Reflect it, but that's a different story. Slime Elementals also have 2 abilities, Slime Bolt, Slime Wave. The Slime Wave does a gnarly knockback and a huge chunk of damage if you're hit by it, so I recommend saving stuns for this ability while interrupting Slime Bolt. Toxic Lurkers, also pretty easy. Interrupt their suffocating smog, or someone in your party is going to be stunned and take damage for 10 seconds. Gnome-eating slimes just do an acid splash and split into more droplets. Just cleave them down to keep the damage bearable. After that, it's pretty much rinse and repeat. It's going to be the same type of mobs, so let's go ahead and speed it up. Side note, there are a ton of buff bots in this area, just in case your group encountered a few oops moments. You should be able to rebuff before the next boss, but definitely before the last boss. Now as you can see here, you can also AMS the consume ability as a DK if you're feeling particularly lazy and don't want to move out. Now Gunker is by far the easiest encounter in this dungeon, keeping it super simple, stand in squirt bots, and kill goop targets. Touching green will cause you to be gooped, and being gooped means you are stunned. Standing in the squirt bot prevents this from ever happening. However, once in a while, Gunker will cast Spatter that goops a random squirt bot. If it's your squirt bot, just break it out and continue to DPS the boss. Once the boss is dead, head up the backside and make your way to our final pylon. Avoid the patrolling unit if you can. You'll encounter 3 more troopers, a renormalizer, and 2 lurkers. I recommend trying to get the lurkers out before they pounce if you can. If not, stun them and burn them quickly because they do a lot of damage for whatever reason. Be sure you're kicking the renormalizers, enlarge, and shrink. Now with this pylon, you want your entire party to just run straight to the last boss's room. LOSing the Spider Lieutenant is the best way to kite it, as it cannot cast at something it cannot see. This should give you your final percent, and if it does not, I recommend pulling the final boss anyways, especially if everyone still has their buff bots. The trash just outside the door can cause an oop moment if someone is not paying close enough attention. So you want to maximize the amount of damage you can do with the buff bots. This final boss is a 2-phase fight. At first you will encounter the Tank Buster, which does just that. When you cast Wreck, this will destroy your tank if they do not have their active mitigation up, so tanks, be mindful, help out your group, and know your abilities. Obviously, you want to avoid giant blue swirlies, and when the walkie-talkies deploy, use crowd controlling abilities such as stuns to root them in place. Mass entanglement works wonders here. Now once the Tank Buster is dead, one of the side coils will be activated. Simply run up the ramp, dodge the gauntlet, and decharge the coils. Now you can jump over the beams as you see here, but it can be buggy sometimes. The beams will send you back to go if you hit them. The bots with the red circles will send you back to go if you hit them. The pulsing electric charge will only stun you and deal damage. Once at the top, click the coil to hack. The more people at the top, the faster it goes. I recommend small movements, as you see here. Moving in front of the mob allows me to only dodge one bot and continue hacking faster as opposed to sidestepping over and over and over. Now once the coil is hacked, run back down and DPS the boss. Ideally you want to do this once, but if you do fail, you will have to do another phase, kill another Tank Buster, and go through the gauntlet again. Woo! I know this was a long one. I appreciate you guys sticking through it. I hope it wasn't too dull or boring. And I hope you're able to take something away to help you in your next Junkyard Keystone. If you've made it this far, I just wanted to say thank you for the tremendous amount of support that I've received so far. I know I've only been doing this a couple of weeks, but I've already halfway towards my first milestone of 100 subscribers. Obviously, I would not be here if it were not for each and every one of you, and if I could thank you individually, I would. But I can't, so I intend to just keep my head down, keep grinding, keep pushing out informative and entertaining content that you guys are coming here to see. That's it for me, folks. Until next time, stay frosty.